A devastating house fire, 5 children missing, no bodies ever found. But then, decades later, their parents received a chilling photograph that changed everything. A single note scribbled on the back suggested something unthinkable. The children might have been alive all along. What really happened to the Sodder children? A tragic accident, or something far more sinister? Our story begins in Fayetteville, West Virginia, December 24th, 1945. The Sauter family, George and Jenny, were well respected in town. They had 10 children and ran a successful trucking business. That Christmas Eve should have been filled with joy. Instead, it became one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries of all time. The children were excited for Christmas, staying up late playing with their gifts. But at exactly 12:30 a.m., a strange phone call woke Jenny Sodder. A woman's voice, unfamiliar, laughed strangely and then hung up. Jenny dismissed it and went back to sleep. That would be the last moment of peace she ever had. At around 1 a.m., smoke filled the Sodder home. Flames erupted, spreading rapidly. George, Jenny, and 5 of their children managed to escape. But 5 of them, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, were still inside. George tried everything. He broke windows, climbed the walls, even attempted to use his truck to break down the house. But in a bizarre twist, both his trucks, which worked perfectly hours earlier, refused to start. The fire burned for 45 minutes, and when it was over, the house was nothing but ashes. But when firefighters arrived 7 hours later, they made a shocking discovery. No remains of the 5 children were ever found. At first, officials claimed the children had burned beyond recognition, but experts quickly debunked this theory. Fires of that intensity should have left behind bones and skull fragments. Yet, there was nothing. No bones, no ash, nothing. In fact, some of the family's belongings, like a fully intact kitchen appliance, survived the fire. So how could human bodies be completely erased? Then came the strangest clues. A neighbor saw a man stealing a block and tackle from the Sodder property before the fire. Another witness claimed to see a man throwing something onto the roof. And even more disturbing, a bus driver reported seeing someone throwing balls of fire at the house. Jenny Sauter later found a strange rubber-like object in the yard. Could it have been a homemade firebomb? And then, the sightings began. A waitress in a restaurant several miles away claimed she saw 4 of the Sauter children with 2 strange men. They were well-dressed, looking nervous, and speaking in a language she didn't recognize. She didn't know it at the time, but she might have been the last person to see them alive. For years, George and Jenny searched for answers. They even put up a billboard offering a $5,000 reward for information, but nothing could prepare them for what arrived 20 years later. Inside was a photograph of a young man, his facial features strikingly similar to their missing son, Louis. But on the back, a cryptic message was written. Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie. Elil boys, a 90132 or 35. The resemblance was uncanny. Was this proof that Louis had survived, or was it a cruel hoax? Desperate for answers, the Sodders hired a private investigator who traveled to the return address, but he was never heard from again. George Sodder spent his entire life searching for the truth. He passed away in 1969, never knowing what happened to his children. Jenny, heartbroken, wore black every single day until her death in 1989. The case was never solved, but the question remains. Were the Sodder children taken? Did someone want to silence them? And what did that final photograph truly mean? What do you believe happened that night? Was it a tragic accident or something much darker? Let us know in the comments below.